While the original release of Kojima's Metal Gear on the MSX2 didn't see a release in the West until decades later, it still managed to hold its own over in Japan, staying well at the top of Japan's top 20 best-selling games lists of the platform for nearly half a year. And following Konami's previous hit in the region, the previously arcade game ported to the Nintendo family of systems Contra, which dominated arcades the same year, it only made sense for Metal Gear to follow the same path, being ported to the NES family with a focus on deliberately appealing to Western audiences. And unlike Contra, which had major chunks cut from the game in its Western release, including a map, story break, and improved animations thanks to Konami's custom VRC2 chip, this modified port of Metal Gear for the NES was more or less the same as it was in the Famicom, aside from some minor differences like vehicle sprites. That said though, it was substantially different from the original MSX2 release, though you wouldn't exactly know judging by the commercials they ran for it. Wow. Metal Gear was ported to the NES without any of Kojima's involvement, which I know might make some fans recoil at the thought today, but Kojima had only done one game for the series at this point and didn't have much of a plan for where he wanted to take the series afterwards, with no plans for a sequel, so Konami choosing to port the game without him isn't too baffling of a thought. That said, the NES obviously isn't as powerful as the MSX2, so some corners had to be cut. Larger sprites like the Hind D and Metal Gear TX55 were removed from the game entirely, and the color palette is much more drab compared to the original, despite the MSX2's use of more olive greens. This modified port ended up releasing 5 months after the original, even exclusively available in Western markets for a short time before later reaching Europe and Japan. The port of course sold above expectations, prompting a greenlit to be sequel to begin production. Oh my god, I had a stroke reading that line. Which will be the primary focus of this video, but we'll get there in a bit. Oh, and I wanted to make a small correction before we go any further. In my previous Metal Gear video, I said that the version that came with the collector's edition of Twin Snakes on the GameCube was the MSX2 release. It was actually the NES version. That's my bad. The biggest thing that sets Metal Gear on the NES apart from the MSX2 release, at least in my opinion, is just how broken it is. The cartridge doesn't have any kind of mapper chip, like Unrom, which was used in the American release of Contra. It allowed for higher graphical fidelity without sacrificing the game speed as much. This same chip was also used in Pro Wrestling, Ikari Warriors, Castlevania, and even the first Mega Man. All games that you could tell at a glance have some impressive graphical design for the time. Metal Gear wasn't too lucky though. Perhaps they thought they didn't need it for how slow of a game it was, but this came with some interesting oversights, though I'm not sure if it's exactly related. Opening any of the sub-menus mid-boss fight will reset the boss to their original position, making Snake into Mobius from the TVA when going against any of Outer Heaven's mercenaries. Think of it like the pause trick from Mega Man 1, but somehow even more broken. This trick can also stop pitfalls as they're opening, but the space that's currently opened by them still has that kill flag set, so you gotta be careful because it will still kill you even if you don't see it. If this was my first time playing Metal Gear, I would refrain from using any of these kind of exploits, but since I'd already beaten the game and this part of the video is going to be focused on the differences between the port and the original release, I'm just going to abuse these because it's fun. A bug like this could also be chopped up to the port's rushed development. Despite coming out 5 months after the initial release, the port was only worked on for 3 months, and due to the lack of a mapper chip, quote,
management wanted to differentiate the Famicom version a bit since the MSX2 had already shipped. Having a different intro was the easiest and efficient way for us to do so since we only had 3 months.
So yeah, that new opening that this game has where you're dropped into the jungle outside of Outer Heaven instead of starting right at the entrance, that decision was made because of the lack of a mapper chip and the limitations that come with it. Masahiro Ueno, which I don't think I pronounced that right, but I don't mean any disrespect, was outspoken about his desire for the game to be powered by the VRC4 chip, used for games like Gradius 2 and Crisis Force. But Konami actively declined this request. Your guess is as good as mine as to why. But this is why the Metal Gear fight was replaced with what was essentially a glorified background element rather than the TX55 itself.
This was simply due to the hardware limitations. It's probably possible to implement the robot if we had used a better mapper chip such as the VRC4, but it was not available for us back then.
This port also has a password system akin to Metroid and has some interesting coincidences in its code. By typing the names of most of the major players in the game, Diane, Ellen, Jenny, Furby, and G-Boss, you'll be warped to the fight with Big Boss with some of the gear needed to finish the game, but what about if you wanted none of the gear to finish the game? Well, we've got you covered there too. Simply type "fuck me" with a bunch of ones at the end, and that's exactly what you're going to be telling yourself. Holy shit, this title screen is fucking fast. I guess if their goal was to make this game feel like a movie, then this title screen was supposed to be the high-budget trailer that oversold the action, even going as far to not show stuff that's in the feature film. Spoiler alert, bullets don't work against tanks. I respect the porting team for putting together this new intro in the forest, even if they failed at adding to the pacing of the game, but you can tell that they tried by making the first guard you see feel asleep. But I gotta ask, who the hell are these other guys parachuting down with me? We never meet these guys, so I'm assuming the sharks got to them? The sharks in the jungle. Okay. Also, we're missing that outstanding jingle marking the beginning of our mission for Intrude N313. Even the theme of Tara is completely missing from the OST, which I consider a huge loss because the NES sound chip really complements the soundtrack here, especially for the final few tracks near the end of the game, which we'll be getting to soon. But yes, Operation Intrude N313 is a go, and it's up to Snake to contact our missing Gray Fox and make his way to Outer Heaven after punching out some dogs. Yeah, you couldn't do this in the original game. You had to put these guys down with the bullet. So this is a nice change and all, but I guess that they thought that that would be too easy because now dogs can set off an alarm. Which, to bounce it back to being too easy, isn't nearly as punishing here. In the MSX2 release, an alarm was indicated by the number of exclamation marks in the alert. 1 meant the alarm would deactivate by moving to the next screen, and 2 meant the alarm would continue even if you moved to another point in the map. Here, every alert is a single exclamation mark, making it a lot easier to exploit. That second exclamation mark is still found in the game's files. I can only assume that the porting deadline is the culprit here, but hey, I mean, it's making it a bit more bearable for this repeat playthrough, especially knowing that dying is more punishing as well. Instead of dying respawning you at the elevator of the current floor that you're on, now your respawn location is dependent on your rank. 1 star brings you back to the jungle area, 2 stars spawn you at the south of the first building, 3 stars spawn you at the east elevator of building 1, and 4 stars the north entrance. I'm not sure why this change was made, honestly, but I could care less. Okay, so you take out this guard here before getting into this first truck, which is now facing west instead of north for some reason. Grab the binoculars, come back out, and that's some bullshit. I've tried everything I could think of. I have no idea how to not get shot here. You can't get a gun at this point unless I did something wrong, so I think that this is mandatory damage. There's a couple of points in the game like this, and I'm not a fan. Hey, remember how Big Boss would trick you into getting into the wrong truck to warp you around the map? Here, this is actually how you make it to Outer Heaven, which is actually a change that I like because they do this again later, and this is a harmless way of teaching you this mechanic, that some trucks will move you to different locations. I initially had a big problem with this, but seeing that they do this again later, I actually grew to like this change. What I don't care for is how you get into the building. The way that you got into the elevator in the first game was by waiting for a shift change so that these guards moved out of the way, but here this is how you get into Outer Heaven, which I thought, okay, if this is the only spot in the game like that, that's an understandable change. But the shift change for that elevator is still here. But this is the only time in the game that's like that, so both of these instances are back to back, which is kind of weird for pacing. The old trick of entering and exiting a room with rations or ammo still works, thankfully, furthering my hypothesis that this was an intentional design choice. Once you enter floor 3 though, you'll eventually learn that you could walk directly under cameras if you're against the wall. And hey, that's a nice change. It feels more in line with future games, how you would stand right under security cameras to not get spotted. I don't know why they glow red hot when you get spotted though. You'll also realize here that soldiers no longer drop rations or ammo when they're punched, which could be a way to lessen encouragement to kill, or the complete opposite, encouraging you to shoot them more because now you're not missing out on those drops. This port was made to appeal to America, so it's hard to say either way. The RC rockets are purple for some reason. There are still electric floors in other areas, but for starters, electric floors outside of this room are only triggered if you're caught. And second, and this is a big one, this room in floor 3 is the only place that they spawn in the entire game, making backtracking for them less favorable to me than just taking the damage and snacking on some rations, which has its own issues here. Rations no longer automatically heal Snake when he takes lethal damage, so there's really no reason to have them equipped at all in this port. You need to open up the pause menu to equip them like they're power-ups in a classic Mega Man game. But speaking of, your inventory now automatically sorts your weapons in predetermined spots. Oh my god, thank you. Now all 8 of my keycards are organized in a nice straight line rather than being scattered across my inventory based on when I acquired them. That's a nice change. You can also shoot while using the cardboard box this time, which I guess makes up for its lack of animation when used. Man, I really missed that one extra frame it had in the MSX2. Let's see, does the Roop still whistle at me when I don't have the bomb blast suit? I have no idea what to call that sound. The way you make it to Gray Fox's hidden cell is by getting captured in the back of this truck, which is that moment I was referring to earlier. This is a great change. Your eyes are naturally drawn to that cargo truck, so getting captured there makes way more sense than just stumbling upon this area in the MSX2 release. Gray Fox's sprite, though, is no different than the rest of the hostages, so that's kinda weird. But I mean, it's also kinda indirectly humanizing for the guy, though probably not intentional. Trekking to Building 2 is now through the forest, which is of course consistent with the new changes, that's a good call. Though the Bomb Blast suit is now the BB suit. Oh god, Die Hardman, I don't want to deliver any more packages. The Hind D has been replaced with a new mercenary, Twin Shot, though it is effectively the same fight. If anything, it's slightly deeper than the Hind D fight because there's two of these fuckers to take out now. You still kill them the same way though. Stand at the side, lob some grenades at them, just spam them till they're dead. Hey, is anyone gonna tell Snake that these grenades don't have the pins pulled? Wait, are the grenade launchers supposed to be compatible with grenades that are intended to be primed with your hands? Whatever, I'm overthinking it. Up here though, we find the one unique item to this port of Metal Gear, the Iron Glove, a passive upgrade for Snake allowing him to punch through walls. I already did that to save Gray Fox though. I guess those walls were just extra crumbly, but every other wall, you need this upgrade. This is one part of the port that was panned by Kojima for hurting the pacing of the game. Maybe it's because it was the only Metal Gear game at the time, but this change didn't really feel too extreme to me. This item takes the place of the parachute you originally needed to get to the courtyard to reach Punished Madnar. I can only assume the Iron Glove was made simply for padding, to fill that need for another item to make progress. But okay, they showed that with an upgrade like this, you can make a passive upgrade, so why didn't they just apply this to the keycards? Now who's ready to stunlock a bulldozer? I could have beaten this thing without the pause trick, but I chose not to because I wanted to show it off. You still need to ring up Jessica to get the RPG to kill Arnold, but you also need her for the compass for some reason. That's a weird change. Whatever, who's ready to get terminated? I am a monster. The scorpions between Building 2 and 3 are a bit fucky too, spinning in circles until they're provoked, but believe me, they will be provoked. Snake saves the good doctor as well as his daughter, who says that we need 16 pairs of plastic explosives to destroy the Metal Gear's supercomputer. You know, I understand the disappointment that we need to take out this thing's supercomputer in this version rather than facing off against the dormant Metal Gear itself, and it doesn't have the same engagement as bombing the separate weak points in Metal Gear in the correct order, or even the turrets in the same room for that matter, but logically, I mean, it makes sense, at least from my limited knowledge that I got from films. I mean, look, if one of the 10 Rings henchmen shot the computer that was powering Stark's Iron Man Mark 1 suit in the cave, that thing would have just been a box of scraps. So it makes sense, at least for Hollywood standards. That's a low bar though. Saving Jennifer's brother from Coward Duck now rewards you with him giving you the correct elevator during the escape sequence at the end. Yeah, instead of a massive ladder climb, we have a pick your own elevator puzzle, which is the worst game of the Price is Right choose your own door event. But you wanna get out of here alive card. After taking out the guards guarding the supercomputer and jamming out to this sweet soundtrack, seriously, this is like the one track in the game that I think is superior to the original MSX version. Okay, maybe it's not better. The NES version is a little bit more lighthearted than I'd like, but I'd rather listen to this version if I'm being honest. The supercomputer is destroyed and Snake confronts Big Boss. The speech is more or less the same, Big Boss going on about how he thought Snake would die and be used as a symbol for why Outer Heaven is a force to be reckoned with. Hey, you know how Big Boss is supposed to be some legendary mercenary? I guess that's what years of running around with hentai on your box in the middle of the ocean does to you. Outer Heaven goes up in an epilepsy warning, and for now, the world is safe from the threat of Outer Heaven and Big Boss. Which is especially the case here because that sequel bait of Big Boss claiming he survived the whole ordeal was cut from the game as well. I even made sure that the sting was there in the original release and not added in the PS3 re-release. And yeah, it's only omitted here in the NES port, which is kind of ironic considering the premise of the focus of our video, Snake's Revenge, the first of 3 direct sequels to the original Metal Gear. What's the third? We'll get there in a couple years. With Metal Gear NES selling well in the West, the thought of a sequel is of course a no-brainer here. But this one was an original game made with Western audiences in mind, once again made entirely without Kojima's knowledge. He didn't even know about the game's existence until a member of the team working on Snake's Revenge ran into Kojima on the train, where he begged Kojima to make a proper sequel, which he immediately began workshopping in his mind on the train ride home, coming up with the skeleton of the plot before he even finished his ride. But we'll be talking about that some other day. It is important to know that while Kojima did somewhat start his own sequel out of spite, it wasn't because he was upset over the quality of Snake's Revenge. He'd even go on the record to say that Snake's Revenge for the NES wasn't a bad game, which is higher praise than he gave the NES port of the first game, stating in an interview with Stephen Kent in 1999 that he felt Snake's Revenge was faithful to the Metal Gear concept. Even as recent as 2009, he'd said that he doesn't consider it a bad game, though he did also state in passing at GDC that it was crap, so take that how you will. Regardless of how he felt though, the game never saw a release in Japan, coming out in the US in April 1990 and 2 years later in Europe. Now, Twitter user Arkhound pointed out oddities in the coloring of the logo, implying that this could have been planned for a Japanese localization, but that just never happened. But yes, this is an original Metal Gear experience for the NES, made with, once again, a Western audience in mind, and boy is it obvious when you take a look at the box and the manual. The back reads like it's Cold War propaganda repurposed for a Saturday morning cartoon. The following commands may be ignored by cowards, traitors, and enemy spies. Later saying, "What do you say, Snake? Are you commando enough to handle this cockamamie scheme?" Which is an obvious play on the word cockamamie, pronounced the same but spelt differently. This is actually the name of our unseen antagonist working from the shadows, Hyarola Cockamamie. A pretty clever name that is never told to us in-game, so until writing this bit, I only knew him as Commander, which is all he's called in the game. This goofy take on Metal Gear, though, isn't inherently bad, and I don't want anyone to think that this is why I don't like the game's narrative. I mean, for God's sakes, look at Metal Gear Rising, easily the most ridiculous Metal Gear game to date, in my personal opinion, and saying that Metal Gear is a 100% serious story is just factually incorrect, but Rising at least had a message in its goofy premise, which was created with sincere execution. I know that I'm looking too deep into this, but Snake's Revenge doesn't really have a message, unless that message is that the West likes ridiculously buff men and giant robots. I guess that isn't too far off. Kojima named the boss in the last game Arnold after two of these exact tropes, so I mean, maybe I'm just buying into exactly what they were trying to sell. The manual continues this tone, describing characters like its bios on the back of action figure packaging, with the exception of Jennifer. Yes, Jennifer returns from Snake's previous adventure, who's blatantly objectified to say the least, being called Foxy in both the manual and the back of the box. I'm aware that Foxy as an adjective can be used to describe someone cunning or sly, but this is the only woman in the game, and you're gonna use that adjective to describe them? I don't know, feel free to call me a fucking degenerate in the comment section for this, but I feel like it's worth bringing up. She's the only character in the game that actually does something out of these three. Well, okay, I guess that's not technically true. Snake couldn't have completed this mission without the work of any of these people. I mean, John gets captured pretty early on, which does help us at the beginning, but that's really all he does. The 80s were just a weird time, but if you look at TV shows that aired back then, like G.I. Joe and the Transformers, it's understandable that Konami thought that this tongue-in-cheek way of presenting Metal Gear, rather than the existential environmentalism tone that the first game kind of had, would be too boring for Western kids, because we're stupid. Honestly, it's an understandable point of view. It is kind of weird that this game doesn't use Metal Gear in the title at all, despite catalogs at the time reporting this game as being called Snake's Revenge: Metal Gear 2. Also, how is this Snake's Revenge? I doubt that they knew at the time that Big Boss was codenamed Snake at this point, so I'm pretty sure that that's out of the picture. But even focusing on Solid Snake, he's just following orders for Operation 747. Very little of this story is personal, which I feel rules out the subtitle of Revenge. But hey, Snake on the box art here is modeled after Kurt Russell this time instead of Reese's Puffs from the Terminator, so that's oh boy. The title screen is still really fast. It doesn't have that unintentional low-budget trailer look. Instead of bouncing back and forth between the title screen and gameplay, it goes between this and a breakdown of the bipedal Metal Gear walking tank, here dubbed Metal Gear 1, instead of the TX-55. That's a fucking boring name. But that's it. I let it loop about 3 times and hope that it gave me something interesting to look at, but no. At least the cutscenes here are a step up in presentation, and I think that's something that I could say about this game as a whole. Regardless of the premise premise, compared to Metal Gear on the NES or even the MSX, Snake's Revenge is visually refreshing. There's a lot of vibrant colors and animations, and even the music and sound design are pretty good. Lieutenant Solid Snake, yes, Lieutenant, is brought back into action to investigate claims of a new Metal Gear in development in the... Actually, I have no idea where this game takes place, and we're never told. I guess it doesn't matter here, but it's basic seek and destroy, alongside his co-workers, John Turner and Nick Meyer. Two names you really don't need to remember, as well as Pilot. He's just called Pilot. But we don't need them, bro. Snake can carry this mission all by himself because he's been hitting those gains. Holy shit, why is he so buff? Snake enters Operation 747 armed this time. This ain't an on-site procurement, as Snake is armed with a pistol and a knife as an alternative to punching. But here, you can punch rations and ammo out of guards again. And knives, I guess, destroy them? Meaning you don't get these drops if you use the knife, and making punching more favorable over the knife for the early game. At least I would assume. I never used the knife here, at least not until we get to the side-scrolling sections, but it's there if you like the option. Yeah, there's also side-scrolling segments here. We'll get to those in a bit. Gameplay is, for the most part, identical to the previous game, but we do have some quality of life improvements. Firstly, menus are much easier to navigate, allowing you to swap between weapons and equipment menus before dipping back into gameplay. This is something that you could do in the MSX2 release of Metal Gear, at least on the PS3 re-release, but not on the NES port. The transceiver is heavily simplified, no longer letting the player set the frequency manually, but I never even got it to work when I tried to raise my colleagues, so it's not like it really even mattered. Even when you pick up the returning antenna upgrade, it just didn't seem to work for me. I don't know what's up with that. Snake rescues a couple of hostages before our old buddy John Turner creates a distraction, allowing Snake to sneak into this unknown facility, because these guards were just too smart to close the door, I guess. Yeah, John gets captured in the process, but hey, that's okay. We actually probably won't ever see him again. I kept entering the screen in full view of the guards nearby, which was triggering an alert and breaking the cutscene from triggering, and the fact that that can happen blows my tiny mind, but you can fix it by re-entering the screen. Yep, this sure feels like a more colorful Metal Gear. It's a nice callback, though, to have the opening couple notes of building one's theme borrow from the theme of Tara. Which is ironic because that theme wasn't even in the NES version. But again, that's something that I'm gonna praise about this game. The music is fucking phenomenal. And I mean, really, that shouldn't be a surprise. This was Konami on the NES. This composer, Tsutomu Igora, I don't think I said that right, I apologize, later went on to compose for Turtles in Time and a bunch of late 90s NBA games? Okay, I wasn't expecting that. Alright, so you grab your first key card, head to the elevator, which gives us a small tease of the 2D sections to come, take out a couple of guards, rescue some more hostages who tell us that our buddy John has been moved, to no surprise. Oh, holy shit, I'm the second rank already? That was fast. This guy also tells us that enemies need something called truth gas. Okay, so imagine a mechanic like saving hostages, which we've already been doing, but requiring a disposable resource to be able to save them. You might think, okay, maybe a key to save the hostage from their bindings of whatever that might be, but no, instead we get enemy officers who spill the dice when you use truth gas on them. That is delightfully wacky. Truth gas is consumed when you use it, so you need to treat it like ammo and rations. Just run in and out to replenish it because that mechanic is back for some fucking reason. Come on, this has to have been left in intentionally. I don't want to hear excuses like, oh, well, this was made from a fork of the MSX2 engine, and when they ported it, they just had to leave it in. No, this is the second time that they've done this for a Metal Gear game. I'm sure that they could have taken this out if they wanted to. Anyways, gassing officers isn't always the most informative when it comes to the story. They usually just spout out whatever propaganda their commander has told them. Our weapons are ready to be shipped. Metal Gear has no weaknesses, etc. Stuff that I'm pretty sure they genuinely believe, but you know, it's a cult. Don't forget the SMG. Even though I barely used it, you can permanently miss this item. Cause see, Snake's Revenge isn't the sprawling Metroidvania that the first game was. I know some folks are quick to say that Metal Gear 1 is closer to a Zelda game because of its top-down perspective, but the progression throughout the world feels closer to a Metroidvania, with Snake progressing around a single, massive map that slowly opens up with upgrades found via exploring. Snake's Revenge, however, is more mission-based, level to level. Once you're done with building one, there's really no going back, and you gotta be sure that you're sweeping the area thoroughly for these upgrades. Soon after, we get our first oxygen tank, ironically given to us in a room with, I don't know, what is this, less oxygen, poison gas, depressurization? I don't know. This oxygen tank has nothing to do with this environmental hazard, so that's a stupid fucking choice. This has no use outside of the 2D sections, which we'll be showing off in just a moment after grabbing these grenades. Oh, thank God the music here is great, because otherwise I would despise these 2D sections more than I already do. These are more action focused, but this ain't no Contra. Snake's arsenal is reduced to a knife that you can swap with a pistol, and plastic explosives that can only be used when you go prone. Yes, you can go prone in these segments, but only in the side-scrolling segments. I guess that's a first for something, at least. It's good to get in the habit of going prone when you go into these screen transitions, because guards don't possess any object permanence unless your eyes meet theirs. But jumping suffers from Castlevania syndrome, where you can't change your direction mid-air. But combined with how fucking massive your sprites are, as well as being shot at, it's just annoying. I don't enjoy these. At the end of the tunnel, we're met with our first boss, the Ultra Chic Assault Unit, a team of robot football players, I think, who made me realize that this game might actually be really bad. This boss fight fucking sucks. Each bot takes 5 grenades to kill, but all 5 of them just book it at you at the same time, where if there's more than 2 alive, it is practically impossible to not get hit at least once per cycle. So it turns into a game of dealing damage faster than they do, as long as you have the rations to survive it. And the best part is that there's only one room with rations that spawn on this current mission, and it's back at the beginning of the game in the jungle, which, guess fucking what? I found the suppressor here by doing so. I know somebody out there is going to defend this by saying, oh no, they actually wanted to drive you outside so that you pick up the suppressor. But god, that is some backhanded level design. I finally killed them about a half hour later, still running out of grenades and needing to whittle them away with plastic explosives. But Jesus, this is a bad sign. And the sad part here is that, in my opinion, this is easily the worst boss in the game, and could have been excused by having this fight take place later on when you have more rations at your disposal. It's a case of them having good ideas and just shit execution. Well, those kind of look like the spiky motherfuckers from Zelda with how they move. God, I wish they were those, because that would mean that they would split up without me needing to fucking bomb them. Hey, let's also make them deal damage and pushback on touch. Sure, why not? There's no problem with that, since plastic explosives actually do self-damage now. This is stupid. A hostage on that ship, you say? Well, I guess that means that this ship is going to be the setting for our next mission. The first of many points of no return. It's, for the most part, the same sort of deal. A new environment with a new set of tiles and sprites, but it's basically the same deal. Unlike later levels, though, enemy sprites are still the same as they have been, so we're not going to see some enemy reskins until later on. So I picked up these flare bombs, which I assumed would behave like grenades, items that you throw, but as I found out, these are actually ammo for a flare gun, which, okay, that's fine. I better stock up on these while I can until I find John, who apparently has been moved for a second time and is no longer on the boat like we initially thought. It's almost like we're being fed false information. But hey, if you needed a dose of helplessness, this officer tells us that Metal Gear has no weak spots. A truth that, again, I think he actually believes, but even goes on to tell Snake that we can destroy the ammo depot on the ship to bring it down, sinking the Metal Gear with it. And my first thought of that is, we? Even when he says that, he still just sits his ass down, so I don't know what this means. The Grenadier Unit. No joke, named Harry, Curly, and Moe. A very obvious Three Stooges reference. Maybe that's why they look like King Hippo from Punch-Out. This is a grenade duel, kind of like the Hind D or Twin Shot from the previous game, but actually forcing you to move around. This is a much simpler fight than the Sheik unit. You just have to run around in circles and lob grenades with each lap. And if you need to, resort to plastic explosives and change up your route a bit. It's not a bad fight, but this should have been the first boss, you know? Whatever. Congratulations, you did it. Pick up your keycard and scream into the sun. The mine detector is back, and it's gotten an appropriate nerf. Rather than showing all the mines on the map like they're on the surface like in Metal Gear 1, now they're highlighted when brought into this crosshair in front of you. You don't need to use the mine detector to beat the game, but you can miss it, and I mean, the change is kinda cool. I liked it. Alright, I've got my flare gun. Let's use the surplus of ammo I picked up to light up this dark room. Oh, never mind, I guess Snake didn't bother to hold on to all that ammo I picked up until I had the gun to fire them. Dumbass. Guess I got no choice but to run back and pick up some more. That cannot be good. Alright, let's see what they're hiding in here. Oh, that's a lot of Texas Instruments. Jesus, no one told me that they were mass-producing TX-55s.
Take a look at the help section in your Alexa app.
What? What can be worse than one Metal Gear you destroy that's inactive? Several Metal Gears to destroy while inactive. Alright, Proto Pequod, I could really use a ride out of here. Go, go, go! Oh god, it's following me! Snake makes it to the pilot, who hits him with the revelation that not only were Metal Gear 1s being mass-produced, but that a so-called Metal Gear 2 has been discovered. Yeah, just label these things like they're PlayStations, that's cool. Also, by the way, Nick has gone missing. That ain't good. God, I really wish I knew where anything in this game took place. Alright, we're at the campsite now. I assume that pieces for the new Metal Gear 2 are being shipped to their base of operation, or maybe we found out where John is going? I have no idea why we're here. Maybe let's try to ring them up on the transceiver and... Alright, that's new. That's okay, this thing never really worked anyway. Ow. I really shouldn't have made a big deal about this whole battery thing. You find it literally 3 minutes into this mission, and it works for the remainder of the game. I'm kinda surprised though that the idea of your transceiver needing a battery was never revisited in later games. That would have been right at home in Metal Gear Solid 3, but whatever. Remote-controlled missiles are at least used more than once like in the previous game on the NES. You need to use them on these unsuspecting stacks of random shit to open up a tunnel to the next area. Whoa, there's a tiny man in that hole! Oh, thank God, at least his missiles are stupid. Make sure you're stocked up on oxygen tanks here so you could survive this underwater crawl. Even with maxed out tanks, I surfaced with 0 to spare. So you really have to haul ass to make sure you don't take drowning damage. But ooh, be careful. This prisoner here says that John may be a traitor. Could that be why he was captured so easily to get into not outer heaven? Well, no, that would actually be an interesting plot twist. This game isn't that smart. John calls us for the first time since that part at the beginning of the game to tell us that he's being loaded onto a train with Snake to follow suit. Oh, what the fuck are those spikes in the floor? What kind of fucked up train is this? Ah shit, sorry bro, wrong room. This is another Sheik situation. This mini-boss here just dishes out damage in a way that you can't really avoid. Thankfully, he only takes 2 RC rockets to take out, but you gotta pause to heal whenever you fight this guy. And I called him a mini-boss because... Oh my god, I hate this fucker. That won't stop me from checking every room in this godforsaken train though. See, I found an X-ray camera. It's paying off. I just didn't use this thing at all in my run. You can use it to see destructible walls that you need to use plastic explosives on, which aren't even a thing in this train, so it's kind of pointless here. And that's gonna be a repeating thing in this game, picking up items way before they're even usable. Alright, John, I'm here to save you. Ah, shit, you're not John. That's right, we've got an imposter. Please don't make memes about that, that's what he's called, and he's just a tankier version of the previous bastards we killed. It's the same deal here, spam RC rockets, heal when you need to, it's just that he takes way more than 2. It's not even difficult, it's just you beat him if you have enough rations or you don't. There's not really any more thought than that. Which, again, I think is really shitty boss design. Snake kills the imposter, who presumably killed John, so we don't even hear from him again after this, and he's rewarded with power armor.
Power armor is for pussies.
Yeah, don't get your hopes up, Snake is no Doom guy. This is closer to the Iron Glove from the previous NES port, allowing Snake to push certain blocks out of the way like he's in Zelda. But hey, John might be MIA, but at least we could get off this goddamn train. But at least Nick is safe, who says that the military operation is a go. Whatever that means. Haven't we been doing Operation 747 this whole time? There's a lot of boulders around here that you have to push with your new power armor. I don't know why they retract back to their original position though. Were these supposed to be minecarts that were later changed to boulders at the last second? Actually, I don't even know if they thought that far ahead. This first introduction to the mechanic though is just so poorly done. You need to push this boulder out of the way and destroy this wall with a plastic explosive at the same time, even though there's plenty of moments after this where you just simply push the boulder out of the way and move on. It just feels like this area needed more time to cook. That may also explain why you find the binoculars so fucking late into this game. That doesn't make sense to me. The binoculars, at least in the first game, gave you an advantage by letting you see a screen ahead of you. That's something that's a lot more helpful before Snake has built up his arsenal and increased his ranks. But we're over halfway through the game now, and it feels like there's really no reason for this to have been introduced this late, if at all. Granted, it's not like I'd use it anyway. I'm using a map for this game. Just to clarify, I'm not using a guide, just a map that gives me a rough layout of the place that I found on GameFAQs by user Starfighter76. This was posted a month ago? What the hell? Who the fuck is even playing this game? Actually, don't answer that. The campsite fucking sucks to navigate. This whole area is filled with one-way doors that you'll inevitably walk through thinking that you're making progress. But it's not like a point of no return door. It's like, oh, you're at the beginning of this loop of this area and cannot go back. Enjoy padding your time by walking through this bullshit platforming segment for the 5th fucking time. Jennifer finally makes contact with us, telling us to meet her up ahead since she's got important information for us. Cool, yeah, I like it vague, whatever. This totally isn't jarring to see after playing every other Metal Gear game. I really miss sitting down with these codec calls with a bucket of popcorn. Alright, I found mines. I can only assume that there's an inevitable tank rematch. Fuck! Alright, back on track. Whoa, the tank's got fucking turbo! God damn! No, motherfucker, I forgot to pick up the mines when I respawned. God, I feel fucking stupid. I can't believe I missed those. Time for the great backtrack of 1990 so I could slap some fucking mines under this tank's balls. Come here, fucker. At least this was more fun than the Metal Gear 1 tank, at the risk of it being kind of bullshit. Literally everything this tank does can insta-kill you, whether it being run over, which makes sense, or getting hit with its cannon, which I guess also makes sense. Snake finally makes it to Building 2, with new grunts dressed in military fatigues, but they're just retextures, so they're not that much harder, but it certainly feels like we're climbing up the ranks of this fucking place. We get our infrared goggles, which need no explanation, though will be mostly unused until the end of the game, but it's not like you could use cigarettes in this one because the cigarettes just aren't here. Because remember, kids, smoking is bad and Snake is a straight edge.
Are you smoking yet?
So there's multiple buildings in this region, and when going between them, you need to ride on top of these like tram cars, and doing so puts you in a side-scrolling segment where it turns into like reverse whack-a-mole, where you need to avoid everyone poking their head out of the car to avoid setting off the alarm so you're not fired on by a bunch of jetpack men. It's repetitive, you need to do this a few times, but I actually think that this is kinda neat. But you know what else is neat? Math. This officer here says that Metal Gear 2 was 7 times more powerful than Metal Gear 1, which, okay, even if we take the MSX game into account, we've never seen it in action. 7 times 0 is still 0, dude. And goddamn, I wish that we could multiply this antidote by 0. That was terrible. Don't worry, there's no scorpions this time. The commander of this base is just an asshole who leaves poison-tipped spikes in his basement. No big deal. Okay, it's not that I wish the antidote wasn't here, it's that what it implies to exist I wish wasn't here, because this fucker is a consumable resource now, instead of being an endless fountain of scorpion begone like in the last game. You get poisoned, you gotta equip it, but you also need to make sure you have enough. What do you mean you have not heard of Metal Gear? Not that I'm surprised that you haven't heard of a top secret black project, but what, is Snake just asking about it the minute he saves your ass? Hello son, I just rescued you. Have you heard of insert CIA project here? You've either heard of it and you're just playing dumb, or this bodybuilder is a fucking dumbass. Whatever, let's just move on. Let's get on the train to the next building. God hath finally smitten my asshole from the skies. Alright, final building time. Why does it look like Dracula's castle? Is Konami just trying to mesh together their 3 killer franchises into a single universe at this point? Actually, you know what? I would have liked to have seen that. And hey, we even reached rank 5 this time. In the last game, we only got up to rank 4, ain't that shit cool? Actually, this is more of a curse than a blessing at this point. While yes, your carrying capacity does increase with each rank, so does the amount of guards who rush you during a double exclamation mark alert, meaning more bullets need to be used to put these guys down, and it's even more padding. I'm guessing that this is their way to artificially raise difficulty relative to how far you are, without setting specific parameters for each region. I actually don't hate this idea, and I think that that's a neat way of handling it. Hey, remember those spikes we saw coming in and out of the train from before? How do you think we get around those from here on? Boots. Fucking boots. Why didn't I think of that? It's so obvious. Just like it should have been obvious for the devs to put in the bulletproof jacket in the game at literally any other point before this. I'm fully decked out into a killing machine at this point. Seriously, the pacing of this game is not good. I really don't need this Kevlar by now. And I can't even say that they learned from their mistakes going forward because, I mean, I don't know if this team worked on another Metal Gear game after this. Don't forget this directional microphone though. Oh, I'm sorry, hidden mic. This is another situational item that will only be used once in the game. I'm really starting to get tired of items like that. This room with the toxic gas fucking sucks though. The mechanic finally returning since the opening of the game alongside these stupid fucking blocks that you gotta blow up. I mean, at least here we know how both of these mechanics work, so we know how to handle it, but it's another segment of just setting bombs and pausing to eat rations and just hoping that you have enough to survive. There's no skill involved, it's just making sure you have enough food. Okay, don't forget to grab the backpack here, which lets us carry double the mines and missiles since we gotta use both of those for the commander when we find him. He's at the top of the structure, and now Snake is on his own. After trekking through a barrage of cock rocket statues and claymore bastards, it's revealed that Nick has been captured and fatally wounded. At least I'm assuming that's the case and has nothing to do with an alien about to burst out of his vestigial backflap. But before passing away in grayscale like he's fucking Optimus Prime, says that Jennifer is a spy working against us, and that Big Boss is on life support. Now, sure, this reveal isn't a surprise today, but at the time, you know, without the context of the rest of the game, the reveal that the commander is actually Big Boss who survived? Actually, yeah, it's still kind of obvious, but I feel okay with it. Yes, somehow the legendary mercenary survived the destruction of Outer Heaven and has been put on some hardcore life support in the form of being covered head to toe with cybernetics. Yeah, sure, Cyborg Big Boss. It's not the first time I've seen it. Alright, I got the smoke bomb so I can escape this place when the time comes. Now, where is this Big Boss? Oh, fuck, he's got geckos! Alright, John, you ready for round two? Not that John from earlier, different. I know your name, bitch. Oh shit, I guess it really is Snake's Revenge. I know I've been nailing this home all through this series of videos, but ladies and gentlemen, observe the world's greatest mercenary at work. God, I can't believe he's letting me do this again! Please tell me he's at least got a trick up his sleeve or something this time. Alright, now we're talking. Holy shit, it's Robert Cop! Would you believe this trend of a cyborg hulking out mid-fight wouldn't be revisited in Metal Gear until Revengeance?
Nanomachine, son.
It's a neat call to have this fight span multiple screens though, like the tank. The only way to hurt this guy is to lay mines and have him walk over him, a trick that we learned by using D-Mic to decipher some mumbles in the walls. But you can also just stand next to him and lay mines faster than the speed of light with the power of our not turbo button. With Big Boss's second death, a kill switch has been activated. Metal Gear 2 is ready for launch, and it's time for Snake to meet it face to face. Well, not really. We at least saved Jennifer, who is indeed a double agent, but was actually working on our side. Poor Nick will never know, feeding us intel that she got from Big Boss, and leads us to Metal Gear 2 and the room where I got stumped for a good 10 minutes, not knowing that I needed to activate the smoke bomb to move on. Oh yeah, Pilot just says follow Jennifer's instruction, and what did she say? Use this door! I am very tired. Snake makes it to Metal Gear 2, who's at the very least more interesting than the supercomputer in the last game. You gotta fire these RC rockets through a tiny opening and slam them into the glowing fuck me light from Metal Gear, while also trying to avoid the shutters opening and closing, but honestly, I didn't even care about timing it. I just brute forced it and fired the rocket as soon as it exploded. Eventually, I even got into a rhythm where nearly every shot made it through. I would still rather fight the TX-55 from the MSX game, but I mean, this isn't the worst. Oh my god, they just turned the light capsule from Dark Dizzy's stage into a boss fight. I can't fucking believe this. Metal Gear 2 is destroyed, and Lieutenant Solid Snake, rewarded for his actions taken today, will be remembered through World Peace Day. Okay? Konami does know that the International Day of Peace is a real thing that was established in 1981, right? Is this when that game takes place? Whatever, this one's at least worded differently, so I guess it's a totally different new thing. Operation 747 was a success. John Turner is reported as MIA, and Nick is promoted 3 ranks after dying for Foxhound, which I guess his family will be very happy to hear about. Cut to the credits of a weird Eddie Brock looking Solid Snake awkwardly smiling into the camera. That looks so weird. Yeah, I didn't love this game, but I'm coming at it from a place of retrospect. Imagine being a kid in 1990 who only played the previous Metal Gear game on the NES, somehow managing to fucking beat it, and then moving on to this game. I could see a kid genuinely enjoying this, not even ironically. Well, maybe with a little bit of irony, I don't know. Looking back at the game today though, yeah, it's not good, especially knowing where the series goes after this, but I'm glad that I played it and gave it that chance, because from what I heard online, this game was fucking terrible. But I think it's at the very least passable. That said though, I am very happy that I never ever have to play this game again.